What did your friend do that accidentally turned you on? NSFW in a hotel room on a school trip with a bunch of my friends. We were of course talking about sex and kinks and crap, and it went a little something like this. Friend: op, do you like to be choked? Me: I wouldn't know. Friend: throws me back on the bed and chokes me. Me: edit, spacing. I was cracking jokes with a coworker, and when she laughed at something I said she pushed at my chest in that "oh stop it you" kinda way, and oh boy I damn near melted right then and there. I came back from freshman year college to visit high school and walked into the auditorium where an incredibly cute girl I was friends with saw me, stopped what she was doing, and literally ran up the aisle and jumped into my arms to hug me. Plot twist: married 26 years and have a son. Drive his car. I've never been into cars or particularly into car guys, but I looked over at him since we were talking and we were going pretty fast, and I don't know, my body wasn't ready to look at my friend driving his fast car, I guess. This one girl started tickling me. When I started tickling her back, she started to moan and said she was sensitive there. Awkward drive home. Oh, I know that feeling. Except that in my case, my friend and I were watching a movie down in his parents' basement back in high school. It was a little chilly, and we were kinda playfully fighting over the throw blanket. It turned into a bit of a tickle fight, but I was winning because I'm not ticklish except for a few extremely sensitive places, whereas he was ticklish everywhere. He told me it wasn't fair that he couldn't tickle me since my only ticklish spots are the sides of my breasts and back of knees. I dared him to try it, thinking he never would as he was a good Christian boy. He absolutely went for it and tickled me unmercifully for about a minute until it morphed into complete and total desire. He could absolutely tell the second it changed, and we ended up making out. I absolutely would have effed him then and there, but we never went any further. We never had a repeat of the makeout session, but there was always a huge amount of sexual tension between us after that, and it really kind of ruined the friendship. I have a voice kink. I specifically like very deep voices and certain accents. Playing D&D with my best friends can be very confusing for my vagina. She was the popular girl in our class. She said "I love you" to me as a friend, I think anyway, or I'm just incredibly effing dense. I didn't like her, but it still made my heart flutter. Held my hand for a few seconds. Just happened a few days ago. She was driving, and we held hands for a while. I'm still evaluating why that had such an impact on me. Still time. Act on / talk about it. I found restraints on his bedposts from an encounter with an ex and made fun of him, then asked him how they work. Instead of telling me, he proceeded to put the ankle restraints on me and threw my legs over his neck and showed different ways he could F me. I've known this dude since I was a kid and he's family to me, but I instantly wanted to drop my panties and say F our childhood. Let's ruin a friendship. So that's how I found my kink in college. Dude, imagine having that much guts. Rather than being embarrassed and half-assing the explanation, he gives a full dry run of how he'd F you. When he whispers into my ear, even though sometimes it's just something silly and not sexy. Really cute girl I had a crush on sat in my lap on the school bus headed home because there weren't enough seats. This same girl also told me I don't ever ask guys out because that's their job. Holy crap, I was so stupid. We were hanging out with a bunch of people and moving from one location to the next. She asked to ride with me in my car since I was solo. When she got in my car she told me to wait and leave the parking lot last. Then she said let's ditch everyone and just go somewhere else. Just you and I. As a guy I decided to fall asleep on a close friend's lap who then proceeded to stroke my hair and lightly pulling it. It was really hard to fall asleep cause I was more worried that I'd get a boner from that. A group of us went to a firework display, and during the usual louder and bigger finale fireworks she jumped, grabbed my arm tight, and didn't let go. Not sure what happened inside me, but yeah, that did it. That's some anin crap right there. Now we just need the part where she confessed, but the fireworks were too loud, and you couldn't hear it. I had this friend that, while having long phone call sessions, she used to talk to me in this seductive sounding Colombian accent and called me bizcocho, which is cake in Spanish. Never thought being called a dessert would be hot, or maybe I'm just weird. I offered him a sip of my drink, and he made intense eye contact with me as he slowly put the straw in his mouth and took a nice long sip. I found it kinda weird to be turned on so much by him sucking on a straw, since I don't have a dick. We've been dating for over 2 years now. Fam, a bunch of my friends have said the same thing. The idea of someone sucking their dick, despite a lack of, is pretty effing hot. Get a strap and tell him to get on his knees. He jumped up, grabbed a fire escape ladder, pulled himself up, and climbed all the way to the top. Just oh dear. That's how I learned I have a thing for people climbing/pulling themselves up. He was driving, and I was riding shotgun. He had to reverse to parallel park, and turned his torso towards me, putting his arm around my seat, in order to look back. He did that so confidently and effortless, that it made me feel a little funny. You mean my good parking skills could actually be useful? We were in some math class in high school, and she was tutoring me mid-class. She was leaning over next to me as I was sat down, and she had her hand on my back. She was almost whispering into my ear how to figure out this problem. Something about her voice was so soothing and arousing. It was very sensual, and I still think about it often. Nothing ever happened with her. We grew apart after school. Something very similar happened at my job recently though, so it brought me back. She dried my motorcycle seat with her sleeve while I was putting my helmet on. Surprise backwards hug that turned into a full-on embrace. Heart fluttered like crazy. A colleague friend took care of my wounded knee during work. We were alone in the canteen, and he was very sweet and caring. Guess I'm not used to that. Ruffled my hair. It wasn't that big a deal, but she was one of my close friends and that just, wow. I told her a joke and she smiled so much, looked at the ground then gave me a "you're so funny" look. I honestly wanted to date her since then. It's been 3 years, and I'm still thinking of her. Multiple things. First, in a party he danced with me and lifted me in the air. I'm not thin, and not many people tried this with me. Then on a trip we made with friends, his cousin made a tent using sheets and a bunk bed. We went inside to read manga on his phone. He put his arms around me so we both could see the screen. Before anyone asks, he wasn't into me back then, but now we've been together for nearly 4 years. He and I were watching a movie when he gave me a hug. While hugging me, he gently ran his hands up and down my back. He didn't mean anything sexual with it. I on the other hand have a very sensitive back and was severely turned on by it. The next day he made fun of me for being ticklish. I then admitted to the truth about that. Needless to say he did it again later. We've been dating for over a year now, getting close to 2. When he flicked between languages whilst talking on the phone with his mother and then asking me to pass him his wallet. I knew people could switch it on and off like that, but I've never seen the flow quite as effortless. I remember a girl classmate friend liking the smell of my deodorant and just grabbing onto my arm and then proceed to walk beside me. What kind of deodorant? Nivea Men Fresh Active Deodorant. A friend of mine I had a crush on sucked on my fingers, as a joke kinda. Then someone told her they do it in porn all the time and she never did it again lol. We were neighbors, she just kicked out her ex-boyfriend, and we lost power due to an ice storm. The power was restored later, but her heat wasn't working right. She called it in, but the maintenance people were busy with calls to fix heat in other units too. We were hanging out at my place watching movies and basking in my heat, though it was still chilly. So we were sharing a blanket on the couch, snuggled up together, and drinking whiskey. She passed out on the couch, so I put on an extra blanket on her and went to my room. About 1 hour later, she walks into my room and just falls into bed next to me, gets under the covers, snuggles up to me, then says I'm cold and passes out. I dunno, maybe I felt wanted and that she came to me for comfort. We didn't hook up or anything. The next morning she woke up and she made me breakfast and went back to her apartment to get her heat fixed. Edit. WTF happened between me posting this and now? Thanks I guess. 3 years ago, we were once on a school trip and we went to the woods and I went with my other friends into the deep woods. We were all boys and we got a little lost. She went out alone to look for me and when she found me, she just hugged me and whispered in my ear, "God damn it, don't do this again. What the hell would I have told your parents and my dumb effing ass?" Just laughed and shrugged and pretended like my heart didn't explode that day. Well anyways, 3 years later I confessed and I'm sleeping right beside her now and she has no idea I'm writing this. I have never been ladylike. So I was play fighting with a friend and he pinned me down and choked me a little. I still think about it sometimes. Yeah, I was never really the ladylike type either. I mean, I'm a dude, but still. Girl was really affectionate and hugged everyone. When she got to hugging me, I was really awkward, so I admitted that I had never hugged a girl before. She said, and I quote, "It's fine, I'll be your first time." All my friends were laughing at how that sounded, and high school me was rock hard. She was my female best friend at the time. We went out to watch A Star Is Born. She rested her head on my right shoulder. I was on cloud 9. I miss her. Guy here. Senior year of high school. A guy dares me to give a massage to my girl best friend. When she sits down, I start giving her a shoulder massage, which I've been told I'm very good at, and she lets out a couple of soft moans and completely relaxes. I had never really been attracted to her until then. Then I stopped, and she slumped back, tilted her head back, so I was looking at her upside down, and she said, "Don't stop." So, that was some feelings I felt. Since this got a fair amount of views, nothing ended up coming out of it. She had a boyfriend at the time, who was jealous of me for quite some time according to her. We haven't talked much in recent years, but we are having dinner and catching up either this weekend or next. Depends on if I have to work this weekend or not. I have feelings for her, but I'm not sure those feelings are strong enough / worth ruining our 18+ year friendship. My back is an erogenous zone for me. Whenever a friend of mine gets too huggy, I need to quietly extract myself from the LMAO. Have had several female friends bite me in a playful manner. Turned me on every single time. Had a friend who got a tattoo on the back of her neck. Decided to kneel down in front of me so I could see it. Never been so happy for willpower in my life. Last thing I needed was her turning around to find a tent. We used to do this thing where she'd kiss my cheek whenever we said bye. She kissed my neck on accident because I moved. I think someone distracted me at a party. That's one of my sensitive spots. And yeah. Edit, we've been dating happily now for 6 years. I'm terrified of being choked, having people touch my neck etc. after an incident where I was attacked and raped. I thought I would spend my whole life with that being a really serious never ever touch my neck kind of thing. Which it was, for several years. Until my best friend, who is this 6'7" monstrosity of a human, playfully lent their hand on my neck. Yup, so it turns out I just needed it to be someone I trust, in a non-sexual setting, to unlock the ability to be turned on via neck being touched. God damn it, brain. So close, but so far. One of my girlfriends walked out of my dormitory building in just some short shorts and a plaid shirt, and afterwards she just sat next to me and put her head on my shoulder. But she has a boyfriend. She was pulling me like aggressively but playfully. There came this weird comfort I had never felt even from my parents. Lol. It's weird. It isn't a known feeling though, so when it happens for the first time, it scares you. Whisper in my ear. Instant boner. When I was a freshman and taking a 6 AM class and going to practice an hour after school, she let me take a nap with her lap as a pillow and played with my hair. Shit was so relaxing. Also, another girl got drunk and nibbled on my ear, and I was like, oh crap. Gonorrhea grabbed my arm as we were walking. We were going to a picnic with our classmates. This was in 10th grade. I'm doing second year of college now, and we were in this deluxe gigantic bus. We actually played hide and seek in the bus. Anyways, so while we were playing, I crossed my legs and sat down under one of the seats, and a female friend of mine came to the same spot and asked if she could hide with me. I agreed and she lied down and placed her head on my lap. But her head was exactly on my penis. It kinda turned me on, but I was trying really hard not to have a hard on and creep her out. Luckily, my efforts were not in vain. I still keep in touch with her and actually mentioned this to her a few months before COVID hit. She admitted that she knew she was on my penis, but didn't want to move because she thought that would make me feel awkward. We had a good chuckle, and we are still good friends. Wait, like how big is the bus for your class to play hide and seek in? Is it like wide? Probably wasn't accidental, but I was drinking with a friend of mine one night, and she was bitching about her boyfriend at the time. I had always been interested in her, but I also respected it when she got into relationships. Even though I really didn't like this guy she was with, she said she was gonna go to bed, and that I could crash on the couch, since I had been drinking. She started stretching in front of me and said that she always stretches before bed. Now I wouldn't have questioned this, but she was sticking her ass right in my face and she was getting into some pretty suggestive poses on the floor. She went to bed and the next day thanked me for letting her vent. A lot of people told me she was trying to F, and I should went for it, but she had been drinking and had a boyfriend, so there were 2 red flags for me to not even try. Good on you for following your heart. She asked me to touch her thigh. She was very proud of them after working out. Little did she know I really like thighs. We are engaged now. Narrator, she knew. Was talking with a coworker and her friend walked behind her and tugged her hair as a joke. Her reaction was a quick lip bite and eyes rolled up. It happened so fast, but I had to walk away for a moment. I was having a drink with an old friend a long time ago. At a point after a brief pause she just looked at me, smiled and said, "You're very handsome, you know." It got a little quiet, awkward, and we carried on drinking and chatting, and soon it was like nothing had happened. But from that moment on I never failed to notice the striking glow of her eyes and my feelings became slightly complicated and conflicted. It didn't last, of course, just bizarre how a compliment can change a perception, especially for us men who receive so few. We barely speak anymore. We are both married, and she has a son. Of course I love my wife with all I have and all I am. But there's always that memory. I've never forgotten it, and imagine I never will. Was very cavalier about getting changed in front of me. Just taking her bra off under her top to get comfortable is a good one too. Wow. My brain just involuntarily played back a highlights reel of every time this has happened for me. I love be in my bunk. Sat beside each other. She laid her head down onto my lap. I went into panic mode and promptly jumped in my seat, making her sit back up. You idiot, you are correct. Not really a friend, but my first boyfriend, when I was still finding out how attraction works. Pulled the collar of his shirt and leaned his head to the other side because he wanted to scratch his neck. IDK, I probably have some fetish for collarbones and necks mayo. My crush felt my hoodie because it was soft. IDK, it felt weird and turned me on. God, I'm so lonely. Dude, I felt this so hard, man. We're in the same boat. I was the friend. She had hosted a party with our friends. We had been on the same beer pong team for a bit, and I had been jokingly giving her a hard time about missing some shots, to which she responded by saying that she'll slap me, an inside joke. It wouldn't have been hard. I stared at her, and she raised her hand to so, and while maintaining my gaze, I quickly grabbed her by the wrist and held on for a second before letting go. She quite literally said that turned me on, and then asked if I heard what she said. I said yeah and continued playing. Edit, I should have added this sooner, but I had my reasons for not doing anything, let alone the fact that she was already hooking up with an acquaintance who was also there. We were sitting on her couch watching Thor Ragnarok, finished our Chinese food. She went got a pint of Ben & Jerry's out of her freezer, and she sat sideways half on my lap and took turns taking a bite and feeding me a bite. It was oddly intimate, but she'd made it clear she was convinced if we started to date we'd end up married, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that. 6 months later we were dating. 6 months after that we were married, coming up on our 2-year anniversary. She looks over at you. This is all your fault. It's an ongoing joke. I tell her I was just looking to bang a hot nurse. She tells me she was just looking for another single parent to hang out with. A friend of mine used to sit on my lap when we'd run out of chair hanging with other friends, and she'd move her hips to find a comfy spot, but goddamn it was hard on me, to find a way that my little John wouldn't poke her in the butt. Which did happen a couple times, which would be followed by her giving me the smile and shifting just a little more and saying something coy. Another time was when we were hanging out while I had a really loose tooth. She was getting annoyed at me pushing at it with my tongue, so she pushed me to my bed, straddled me, and reached her hand in my mouth to tear my tooth out. From the sounds being made, my groaning, the bed shaking, my dad came up to make sure we were alright, then saw us sweaty, her on top of me, face right up to mine, and thought we were about to do it lol. After she used that as a distraction enough to yank my tooth out, I had to go downstairs to stop up the bleeding and managed to explain to him what had happened, to which he looked mildly disappointed, and I think his headcanon to this day is that I had sex with her, or at least some light, over the clothes action. Didn't do crap, but we were rock climbing, and the rope was too tight, so he helped me untie it, so he got close enough for me to catch his smell and he actually smelled so good. Instant turn on might seem weird, but it is what it is. D. And nope, he wasn't sweating. BC, he belayed me. The old my figure 8 is too tight from taking a massive whip move. Oldest trick in the book. Best mate's girlfriend, and I got along really well. I got along great with her parents. I was sitting on the couch at her parents' house watching motorsport with her dad. She sat next to me, fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I was okay until I could hear that cute little breathing noise coming from her. My mate broke up with her a month or so later. I was far too dumb to pick up on the many signals from her. I was making coffee in my AeroPress for us and pressing slowly on the top of it, like you're supposed to, when she shouldered me over a little and leaned on my hand to push it down faster. It was cute as F, and I'll never forget it. When she put her hands on the back of her neck while leaning on the table and her eyes never left yours while listening to you. Instant turn on. Yes, I can picture this way too easily. Have this friend of mine, one day at home, while we were drinking with some other friends, she started singing. At that moment I looked at her and didn't just see my friend. I saw a very attractive young woman. I sometimes still see that moment when I look at her and shake the thought away. About a year ago I had the same thing with my girlfriend before we got together. I have had a thing for her for quite a while when this happened, but in that one night where she drove me home from a festival at like 4 in the morning, she started to sing randomly to a song I happened to like very much at the time, and it was the most beautiful thing I they ever heard. I must stared, because suddenly she stopped and asked if I stared because I liked it or because of something else. So then I told her that I really liked her singing, which she obviously denied because her singing was horrible. We said goodbye, and I thought about what happened for the next few days. A week later I decided to ask her out, and we are still together 1 year later. Moved into an apartment where my roommate was one of my best friends who happened to be a girl. Completely platonic relationship for 12 years at that point. 6 months later I'm stoned out of my mind, as per usual, when I get home from work late at night and she asked me to lay down in her bed with her because she had woken up from a nightmare. So I laid down on top of the blanket and she fell asleep. I had intended to get up and go into my own room and watch cartoons with the rest of my high, but I ended up getting comfy and fell asleep. The next morning she woke me up by lightly scratching my back, but little did she know that nails on my back are an instant turn on. Never had any feelings for each other. Never did anything even remotely physical. Nothing. Just boom. Instant would. Jokingly told her to cut it out, or it's gonna get awkward, and she didn't know what I meant at first, until I rolled over and she saw the tent in my pants. We discussed the idea of us being together, or even just casual sex between friends, and 1 year later I wifed her. No regrets. Not a single letter. Married my best friend because she accidentally made me horny. When I worked in a restaurant, the head chef was the type who was very particular. His way was always right and he was bossy, but he was also super nice / funny to it balanced out. He essentially just had a very dominant personality. I would call the garlic toast garlic bread because I didn't see much of a difference, and while we were rushing, that's the name that would come out of my mouth. It was kind of our thing to bicker back or forth. We had fun and laughed with it and it never had any actual tension. But one day I yell for some garlic bread. He's holding it in his tongs and is about to give it to me when he says call it garlic toast. I said okay I will. When he goes, no, say it now. Call it garlic toast, I want to hear you say it. So I start giggling and say okay chef, to where he once again in a very dominant way says no, say it. Once I cracked and laughed then said it. He smiled and good girl. Oh, the sub in me has never been happier. We were both drunk at a friend's house party and I playfully pulled her hair to get her attention. She gasped and then gave a happy little moan. What made it hotter was the way she gripped the seat of her chair with both hands and encouraged me to do it again, and so I ended up playing with her hair all night. I still think about her gorgeous bliss-filled face, though sadly we never took it any further. I was going to post the same thing, except I'm the woman in this scenario. A friend of mine playfully wrapped my ponytail around his fist and gave it a tug, and it woke something up inside me. I couldn't help but make this little sound and looked at him with the most obvious bedroom eyes. We were sitting at our crowded lunch table too, and the guy, who is the most shameless person ever, actually blushed for the first time I can remember. Then our friends proceeded to tease the crap out of us. Did a friend ever do anything that accidentally turned you on? Let's hear it down below in the comments. Remember to like and subscribe, toodles.